Good morning and a very warm welcome to this webinar. It's great that you've taken the opportunity to join us on this Saturday morning. So a welcome to you wherever you are. So this morning for 20 minutes I'm going to share, especially at this moment which is the cusp between the old year and the new year, how the new year, that word new, we automatically each year start thinking about what can I do new, what newness can I bring in. And this morning we're going to look at it from a spiritual perspective, how I can bring new energy, how I can freshen myself, how I can bring some sense of creativity and renewed zeal, enthusiasm into my daily life. And we're going to look at this from a spiritual perspective because in my experience this happens, and it happens internally as a meditator. And for me this is really one of the motivations behind meditating and practicing meditation. Again, back to this analogy with sort of New Year's resolutions, it's usually a habit we want to get rid of. I know in my case, it's been lots of habits I wanted to shed, and you start the New Year's resolution, you think, yeah, I'm going to do it today, and you do it day one, and then by day 3, 3rd of January, usually it's got a little bit lost, and then there may be some sort of sense of resignation that follows that. So how can we really stoke up some fresh energy, some new energy within ourselves that's going to allow us to, even little teeny habits make a shift. Biting my nails, whatever it is that I just want to shift in this new year and to feel freer. And I have found that by learning to meditate and by practicing, so there's always that element of practicing in there, by practicing, actually, it really does somewhere from deep within the self bring this power, bring this fresh energy that helps me sustain, not only letting go of the old, but actually bringing in the new. And even the very act of learning to meditate is bringing in the new. It's bringing in a positive habit into my daily life that really has a big impact on every area of my day, because it's meditating is this ability to go within, to become introvert, to start to notice, first of all, what's going on in the mind. So meditate means just to think, but it's more than just thinking randomly. It's to ponder deeply. It's to reflect. It's to give myself time. And this, it's a very natural thing, but we've sort of lost the plot in this crazy, frenetic modern world we live in, where, as we know, we're all pulled left, right, and centre throughout our day. So if we can develop this habit at the beginning of the day, use it at the end of the day, refer to it throughout the day, it has a really extraordinary effect in terms of our energy levels, how we can maintain them through our day, through our working life, through our home life, wherever it is. So in order to meditate, we need to have something to meditate on, something to ponder on, something to think about. And for me, this has all been about a shift in perspective. Perspective, noticing actually where my perspective is coming from. And we have to sort of really melt away the layers, or peel back the layers, first and foremost, on the perspective of the self. What perspective am I holding at any given moment towards myself, towards who I am? And it's quite interesting. I have a 22-year-old son, and he's always sending me little WhatsApps and Instagrams or whatever it is they use. And I got one yesterday in the Science Museum in front of a big picture that says, "Who am I?" And I thought, wow, this is a big question. that's being broadcast from, a huge, big institution like the Science Museum in London. And I thought this question is the question of the times, and it's reaching, in every endeavour, and within science, which I find very interesting. So who am I? And this perspective of who I am. And with Raj Yoga, with the understanding of Raj Yoga and learning to meditate with Raj Yoga, this is the first tenet, is to shift my perspective to understanding, first of all, that I actually hold many identities. Many identities sort of pass through, are like little security blankets within myself, and they have developed since a very young child. For all of us, we have developed many, and they can often be based on role. They can often, well, first and foremost, they're probably based on family, and the context, the dynamic that I hold within a family as a sister or a brother, a mother, a father, an uncle, a great aunt, whatever, a grandchild. So all of those roles, yet often we create little identities from these, and that family, particularly the culture, the context of my life, the profession, all of these, we've created little identities, and yet they're a moving feast. I mean, the familiar ones tend to last longer than possibly the professional identities, that can change quite often. But they're still moving, they're still changing, ever shifting. And I certainly, when I started to meditate, and even now as I continue to meditate, is that what am I really seeking? I'm seeking deep security within the self. And all these little identities have somehow, I had noticed, led to more insecurity. So this big question, who am I? Am I all those little roles and sort of acts that I play and that people perceive me as, the boxes, as we often call them? Am I, these boxes, or am I something more? And I always felt from very young that, I'm the one inside. I am the one who thinks, the one who feels, the one who experiences, and the one who expresses. And this is what we learn as we meditate, that yes, that is who I am. And very specifically to understand that I, the thinking being, am the being, in a sense, before I'm the human. So instead of human being, I'm a being having a human experience. And often all those little identities that I just referred to, they come from this perception, this perspective of thinking that I'm the human. So as I learn to meditate, I shift this perspective to thinking I'm the being. And yes, I obviously inhabit a human form, and I function in this world through this wonderful human form. Yet we learn as we ponder, as we reflect, as we give time, as we create this habit, this new habit, to dwell on the fact that I am much more than this finite matter that I dwell within. I am the being. This instantly, in my experience, has access to something deep within the self, something deep in terms of energy. Energetically, it's as though something's bubbling up and just coming up, coming out, something fresh. And it's like, oh, I'm tapping into something that's resonating within the self. And automatically, I'm sure you've had many moments of this throughout your life, when something resonates you, when you hear something that triggers something in you, and especially when it's something deep. And it can happen often, can't it, if we listen to a beautiful piece of music, or we see something, or through the senses in some way, something triggers something, yet it's not connected to the senses, it's something deeper. And in those moments, it's as though some sort of energy just sort of comes through. And it's important to look at these moments and notice them or reflect back, because they're very real. We would say it's the authority of our own experience coming through. but it indicates, it gives me this hint that I'm somehow tapping into this place where there is this enormous capacity, this huge energy, life force, that often, in a sense, is quite suppressed, because we are very connected to our senses. So that's a bit of an irony, in a sense, that we use the senses, yet it is often the senses themselves that suppress this vital freshness, this vital creative energy from coming through. So a shift in perspective is needed to understand that I am the being. Yes, I am the one that thinks and feels, expresses, experiences through this body, but also a bit more about, well, who is this one? And also what is the propensity, the natural propensity of this one? Who am I in terms of what do I look like, and what is my, what is my ability? What is the natural energy of this being? And within the context of Raj Yoga, I have learnt that the inner being is originally completely pure, originally. So, and in the purity of being, there is the innocence, there is beauty, there is wisdom, and there is joy. There is that bubbling up energy, that energy of light. And that's right at the heart, right at the core of the being, of who I am. So as I shift this perspective from identifying with all the boxes and all the contexts of the life as I move through it, which I will continue to do so in all the relationships, in all the endeavors, etc. But this inner shift of perspective, that I am this inner being that is intrinsically full of energy, full of light energy. And we could think of this in terms of the energy of love. The energy of love being the energy that gives, like it nourishes, it's benevolent, it's innocent, it's incapable of harm. And that's right at the heart of each and every one of us. Yet, how often do I behave from that place? How often do I come from that place? And how often do I even remember that part of me ever exists? So this is the attention. This is the new habit. This is what I want to, as I move through my days, to develop and sustain, to come back. It's a return to. It's there. That's why it touches us. That's why when we see someone else in that place, we're struck, we're pulled towards them, because it's a reminder of that within ourselves. So new energy, new strength, because this is actual strength. The strength to be peaceful. And what's peaceful? Peaceful is that state where we're not experiencing friction. We're not experiencing any level of anxiety. Yet it's very full. It's very powerful. It's not empty. It's not passive. It's actually brings a huge amount of activity and creativity. Yet it is a benevolent energy, and it gives and it nourishes. And the first one to benefit, the first place that this energy, when we touch it within ourselves, to benefit is the matter that we dwell within, the body that I live in. So it affects. It's as though everything, all the cells in the body, just relax a bit. They become at ease when I, the one inside, am touching that deep place of ease, of what is known as peace. So we've all got it. It's all there. The art of meditating, pondering, reflecting is to start to once again access it, because we've got a lot of clobber. We've got a lot of stuff that needs to be thrown out with the old. It's all old, and it's covering up this beauty. It's covering up this energy. It's suppressing. It's somehow distorting really the reality of who I really am. As we start to go within, as we start to touch this place, we start to recognize it first of all. And in that recognition, we can start to explore it. It can take time. For me, it's taken a considerable amount of time because I had a huge amount of emotional clutter, baggage, whatever we like to call it. But it's a cleaning game, just as we clean our homes. And we suddenly re-find the things of beauty and order and harmony when we do that, just the same as we clean our inner home, and we can do that. It's important in this new perspective to again really get this position in a place where I can easily access this sense that I am the being. We would call it, in spiritual terms, I am the soul. I am, in a sense, the eternal one, because the soul is spirit, it's invisible, yet we perceive each other as spiritual beings through the body. As we look at each other, we sense each other, we pick up each other's vibrations. So it's, the proof is there, but it's subtle. And it's important to get this relationship right. So one lovely analogy that is very useful, and you can try it, is to see yourself as the driver of your car. And I mean as the one inside is driving this car of the body. Now, when we drive a car in the world, we don't generally forget that we're not the driver and start to identify with the car. So when we remember that, we can see, yes, quite clearly, either one inside. I'm sitting in the driving seat, and my experience is that where am I seated? I'm seated just behind the eyes. The eyes are always remembered as the windows to the soul, but perfectly, the eyes are the windscreen. And, I use the eyes to look through, to perceive the world, to navigate myself around the world. If I don't have use of the eyes, I use the ears, I use the nose, I use the senses. So I'm perfectly seated in this body behind the eyes. So as you meditate, just notice that's where you sit. That's where you are. So just behind the eyes, in that headspace. Consciousness, you, the conscious, thinking, feeling, experiencing being, you are coming from that place. And you are driving, you are the driver of that body. It's the first relationship, it's the continuous relationship that you have, and you're driving it. And it's to just get into that place and remind yourself that originally and intrinsically, so intrinsically means it's always there, that peace, that loving energy, that creative force, that energy that allows me to wake and think, yes, hello today, what's up, and to move with the day like that. We can get back to that place as I develop the thought that takes me back there. And this is what the attention is needed, is required. This is the new habit that's going to bring new strength, that's going to bring renewed energy. So thank you for listening, and great to connect with you subtly. Yes, I think we've got a question. So let's hear the question.
Thank you. One question, just by thinking you are a being and asking this question, who am I? Can we expect to feel something different from being a human? So what is that process which is happening? Is it just thinking about the soul? Or?
I think for me, the thinking to dwell on, to ponder it, is the first step. It doesn't necessarily in itself bring about the experience, but it's moving in the right direction. I am now redirecting my train of thought inwardly, which is something we so rarely do. And it might be an interesting place for you to start just for today to think about as you go through your day. Just notice, not even intentionally think about the one inside, but notice where your thoughts are going. And when I've done this and continue to do this, I notice that the thoughts are continually and constantly caught up in the senses, in the bodily, on the bodily level, if you like. So this is the starting point to think about, to consider, if you like, this notion that I am the spirit, I am the soul. Yes, I'm within this body. I'm thinking through it. I'm feeling through it and through the senses. Yet I am separate to it. To start that and to start developing more thought on the nature of the soul and to dwell on the fact that I'm intrinsically benevolent. I think this is very powerful. And okay, we may not get an experience straight away, but I'd say keep going. It's a bit like, you know, the miner who's going for the diamond. He knows the diamond's in there, but there's a lot of coal to move out of the way, and it needs quite a lot of persistence and attention to get to the diamond. So you'll get there.
Thank you. With regard to removing the old, I've noticed it brings up a lot of fear. Is this normal?
Yeah. I would say so. Because fear, in a sense, is the old. So, you know, because that's the other thing, is that as I'm starting to remove the old, I notice the old. And in terms of my thinking patterns, the old is all wrapped up in fear-based thinking, all coming from a place of insecurity. I heard this term yesterday, which I thought explained it beautifully, sort of subconscious panic. On some level, there is this anxiety. But to recognize that this is all old is a huge shift in perspective. And also to recognize that when I step into this new perspective of seeing myself and getting secure and anchored in the spiritual identity of being intrinsically of huge value, of huge worth, of great beauty, and I start to anchor in there, even if no one else notices, and I'm not even necessarily noticing it in any shift in behavior at that moment, that seed is starting to work. And as I water it, it will develop. And actually what starts to happen, yes, I notice these great heaps of fear coming up, and it comes up in the form of real discomfort. But I would say, you know, keep your seatbelt on and ride it, because as it comes up, it's actually going to dissipate. Because for so long, just to cope, I know this is what I've done for a very long time, is I've suppressed fear. I've sort of, you know, feel the fear and do it anyway. There's the truth in that. But I've also suppressed it. I've tried to put it out of mind. And yet I haven't yet dealt with it. So therefore it's still sitting there. So yes, in the journey, you will notice a lot of fear-based thinking, a lot of discomfort may well come up. But as long as you're sitting and you're holding this new perspective that I am that eternal one of beauty and strength, and I can deal with it, then you will be able to deal with it. And you'll be able to let it go. And also in Raj Yoga, we learn about a great source of power to support us in that process.
Yes, it would be nice to understand what exactly you do in the meditation. You mentioned pondering and thoughts, but maybe you could share a bit about your process.
It's funny. I don't use this term process. So I think
method.
Yeah, maybe method. It is just to in my mind create the thought that I am, the being inside is much more, first of all, than the body I inhabit. And that I am seated inside. And I tell myself this, I talk to myself. I think that would be the method, actually, is rather than studying it as something philosophical or intellectual, I'm actually talking to myself about it. So I'm creating, I mean, we talk to ourselves 24/7. So instead of just talking to myself about, the old, or the fears and the worries and the concerns and daily life and just the mundane, I'm just basically just shifting that dialogue into a different conversation with myself, into a conversation that actually starts to really bring up new feelings, new energy. And when I talk to myself that as a soul I'm eternal, as I start to allow that to sink in and seep through the layers of fear and the layers of insecurity, then as I've done that, I have just found this extraordinary new energy being accessed. And that for me has then kept me meditating, because something is being accessed. And I can move differently. And actually what I find as I talk to myself more and more on this level, and I do need spiritual knowledge in which to base this conversation on. That's very important. But as I use it, there's a lovely analogy in Raj Yoga which talks about how the cow, takes a great chunk of grass first and foremost, and then just starts to chew. And as the cow chews and chews and chews, and I actually know this quite graphically, because I grew up on a farm, so I was surrounded by cows, and I always used to be rather jealous of cows, because I used to think that they had rather a lovely life, just sitting in the field and walking about and chewing all day. But actually meditating is, and I think cows do it quite naturally, but we're learning to do the same, is to chew on. What am I thinking about? What am I chewing on? And if I take some nutritious understanding, and then I chew on that in my mind, I sort of throw it around my mind, I converse with myself, I dialogue with myself on it, then what happens is it turns into real nourishment. And I feel secure. I feel at ease. I feel in touch with a deeper place inside myself. Okay, so I think that's all for questions. So how about we all just have a little practice at having that conversation with the self from a new perspective, a perspective that can bring about sweet feelings emerging from within. Okay, are we ready? You sitting up straight? Very good. That's the only sort of prerequisite as we meditate is do your best to stay awake. And whatever way we can help ourselves do that. So usually just feeling comfortable, allowing the body to be at ease, but also being alert. So I'm going to speak out this meditation. I'm going to keep my eyes open because that also helps me to keep awake. I don't want to nod off in the middle of the meditation with you. So I'm going to keep my eyes open, and I encourage you to do the same, because also it allows us to keep that inner conversation going, not just when we sit down for moments of attention and focus meditation, but also to keep that conversation going throughout your daily chores, your daily activities, which can also, again, bring about new energy, freshness. So let's have a go with our eyes open. So just sitting comfortably, awake, and just notice for a moment the energy that's running through your body. Notice it in your toes, your fingers. Notice all the inner workings of the body. Give thanks to the heart as it continually pumps. See if you can tune in right now to the beat of the heart. Become present with it. And tune in to your breathing at the same time. Notice how the body is continually renewing, refreshing itself, silently working away, and give it thanks. I thank it. And now just ask yourself, who am I that thinks? Who am I that feels? Is experiencing this life? And recognize, remind yourself that I am the inner being. And you can visualize yourself in the form of light, in the form of a star. And you can see this star in your mind's eye. You're visualizing it. You're visualizing yourself in your mind's eye. And as I do that, I'm pulling my thoughts inward. I'm creating a space between either thinking, being inside, and the senses that I use. I'm letting the senses have a rest as I do this, letting them be peaceful. And I continue this inner dialogue, this inner chat, as I remind myself that I am a being of love. And what is the feeling of love? What is the experience of love? Ask yourself. It's an energy. It's light. And when I touch this place, I go straight there to bullseye within the heart of my being. I touch that place of love. It's underneath all the layers, but in just a second, I can connect with it. And as I do, a subtle energy of love releases itself, comes forth from within my being. And I can visualize myself vibrating with this energy of love and sending this feeling, this sweet, comfortable, kind, nourishing feeling. I can send this vibration through all the physical senses, through the computer of the body, the brain, and down through all the muscles and organs and bones and cells of the body. So I, the inner being, from this point, I'm nourishing this human form. And as I do that, as I visualize this happening in my mind's eye, I can sense with my sixth sense Matter appreciates it. This body goes, it is relieved of fear. It is relieved of stress. So I continue to remind myself, to recognize and notice that loving energy at the core of my being. And I take this perspective, this awareness back into my day as I continue. Thank you. Thank you for listening, and wonderful to connect with you. And wishing you a very, very happy new year, happy new you, and a year of love ahead. Namaste.